Hello and welcome everyone, I am Madals and welcome to How to Cast StarCraft 2. Now, I decided to do this after getting lots of people ask me, hey Madals, how do I get into casting StarCraft 2? How can I improve? How can I make sure that my content is enjoyable and I do the best job I can? And there really aren't that many resources out there as far as I've seen on how to get into esports commentary. So while this is catered towards StarCraft 2 in places, a lot of the principles can be applied to other games such as League of Legends, such as any kind of Dota 2 or things like that. So make sure that you don't just think of this for StarCraft, but all of esports commentary really. The only thing I would say is it may not be quite as applicable for FPS games because they are very different. So, let's move on to the first point. And there are 5 points in this slideshow, so it's nice and simple, nice and quick. So, let's start off with something quite obvious. You need to have the right setup to cast StarCraft 2. First and foremost, and this may come as a bit of a shocker, you do need a copy of the game. If you don't have a copy of StarCraft 2, you're not going to be able to watch the games or play the game, and it just isn't going to work. It would be a bit like trying to play football without a ball. It's kind of required. So, we got our copy of StarCraft 2, it's all looking good, it's in front of us, it's installed, we're ready to go. Next thing you're going to need is a way for people to see what you're watching. So you need screen capture software. That could be in the form of something like XSplit, which is what I personally use. It could be in the form of OBS, which is a new open source software. It could be Fraps. There's loads of different things you can use. And it's up to you which one you go for. Some are paid, some are free. There's different features. Just find one you're comfortable with. Look at all of their different options and that sort of thing, which you can afford. And then go for the one which is best. Now, once you can record the screen, you need to be able to record the next most important thing, your voice. Because this is what people are coming to your channel for. So you need a good quality microphone. The one that's built into your webcam or your laptop or a gaming headset, unfortunately, just isn't going to cut it. Now, ideally, you want a condenser mic. Freestanding is fine. Be careful of background noise though. There's things like the Blue Snowball mic, which is under £100. You get a great condenser mic that'll be absolutely fantastic. It's USB. If you get more background noise, look for broadcaster headsets. They can get quite expensive though. Or at the very least, try to go for an actual good microphone. There's lots of places you can ask around for that. And finally, you obviously need somewhere to put the cast you make, so hosting the video. That could be YouTube, or it could be streaming through something like Twitch TV. Now, different computer setups are going to be capable of doing different things, different qualities. You may not be able to record at 1080p, you may have to not be able to stream at 1080p due to your internet. Now, I'm not going to cut onto that too much, purely because there's loads of forums out there where you can get a lot better and more detailed advice than I want to cover in this video. So, let's move on to point 2, the voice. Your voice, as I said previously, is what people are going to be listening to. It's what makes you casting it more interesting than someone else or them just grabbing a replay and watching it themselves. So I've got here 5 main points that I think really sum up a lot of what the voice needs to include. And I've got feedback from a couple of community groups, forums, Reddit, etc. to put together this presentation, so I've tried to accumulate all of the different opinions and feelings to get a more general guide. So first things first, you have to be articulate. If you don't say what you want in an easy to understand manner, then you're not going to come across right. Make sure what you're saying is really clear. Next thing you want to be thinking about is the volume of your cast. By all means, get excited, be enthusiastic. If something amazing is happening on screen, then yeah, get a bit loud. But do consider the fact that some people have headphones. And if you're very, very quiet in some points of your cast, and then very, very loud in others, anyone with headphones in is not going to like you very much. And I'm sorry if anyone was listening through headphones then, and I hope it wasn't too bad. So make sure you do think about the volume of what you're doing. Make sure you're clear and easy to understand. Next, pitch. Monotone voices aren't very particularly interesting to listen to. So make sure you vary it up. Get your tonality right. Try and it all comes back to sort of public speaking and giving presentations. There's loads of resources online about how to work on that. Just make sure that it's engaging. You're engaging with not only the viewer but also with the game itself, so you're feeling and getting your emotion across in your voice. Next, of course, away from actually just the sound, is the flow. You want to be taking pauses. Don't be afraid to have a little pause, take a breath, consider what you're going to be saying next, because it's very tempting to get into this kind of verbal bulge of just blurb, and you talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, not really thinking about it. It may not make much sense, and you may not come across that well, and you'll also put in lots of ums and ers and that doesn't sound very professional. Just take a second to think about what you're doing. Finally, your vocabulary, and I mentioned it a bit there, ums and ers. Everyone's going to do them. You're going to have to stop and think for a second, and it's natural for a lot of people to use those time fillers. Try to phase them out or use them as little as you can. Next, try not to repeat yourself too much. Anyone who's watched StarCraft 2 will know that it's very easy to say, that was a perfect fungal growth, that was an epic storm, or get into these sorts of patterns of things you'll use to describe things. Try to knock those out. Try and use different words, because in one game it might be fine having something referred to as a money fungal or something like that, but if you're doing an entire LAN event in the future, or you're doing a tournament where people are listening to you cast anywhere between, say, 10 and 100 games over the time, then all in all, they're not going to want to hear that phrase every single game. It will get very repetitive and very tedious. So that's all I want to say there. Step 3, you've obviously got to understand the game. And this is something which a lot of people panic about, in my opinion. There is no need to be the world's best player, or to have some incredible wizard-like knowledge of what's going on. Keep it at your level. And this is something I got back from the community groups, which is something I've always believed, that some people are watching it for enjoyment. Some people are watching it to learn. Some people want your Apollos, your Artosis, your Day 9s to do all the casting. The professional players, they don't care what they sound like. They don't care how enjoyable it is. They just want to know facts, figures, numbers, and just to know how they can get better, and all the little inconsistencies in play. Some people, though, they just want to have fun. They don't care about any of that side of things. Most people are somewhere in the middle. But one thing they all share in common is don't try and fake it. If you don't know what's going on, don't make an uneducated guess, because you'll just look silly. It's better to just stick to the facts. I mean, there's the production tab for a start, where you can actually just say what's happening, and when you're starting out, if your game knowledge isn't that good, just do it play by play. Say, they're building this, it's going to be a good engagement, or try and hype up what's happening on screen. Try not to just be a robot and speak exactly what's happening, because they can see that themselves, but ultimately just don't fake knowledge you don't have. And if you do want more knowledge, which is something that everyone should strive for, the more you know the game, the better you are at it, and the better you understand what the players are thinking, the better your casts are going to be, and the more interesting they'll be for the audience. So do your research. There's loads of resources to learn so much about StarCraft. Be that playing, be that reading forums, be that watching instructional videos such as the Day 9 dailies. You can learn an awful lot about the game, and you have to constantly be researching. There's so many tournaments and so many great players out there who are always innovating in what they do in the game, that you need to be up to date with that. There's something called the meta game, which is what the current consensus is of most people on how you do things. When StarCraft 2 first came out, in the Protoss v Protoss matchup, it was nearly constantly going to be a 4-gate. Whoever could do it first would win. That metagame has evolved over time to people having loads of strategies to counteract that, to get better, to do different things, and you need to be up to date with those, because they can change very suddenly with very little warning. It just takes one person to be innovative, and then everyone else will follow the trend, so make sure you keep up to date on that. And how else can you make sure that you're coming across well, like you understand the game? Think before you speak. I'm coming back to the production tab again, but if you're sitting there and you're saying that, I reckon this person's going to go for a Stargate opening or something, or they're going to go for a 4-gate, when you've just seen them throw down a Nexus first, it's going to make you look very uninformed. So just take a second to think about what you're saying. Does it make sense? Plan your sentence a little bit, if nothing else. Make sure that, all in all, people can follow your chain of thought, and your own chain of thought is at least following remotely where the game's going. And finally, get to know the players a bit, because this doesn't matter too much if you're not casting the real pro players, people who are getting loads of exposure, have loads of match histories, easily accessible. But if you are casting those people, know their playstyles, know what they like to do, watch a couple of their other games or their more recent games, see what they're doing. Are they an aggressive player? Do they like to get loads of drops going off? Do they like to sit back and just play safe? Those sort of things can allow you to fill up times when there's not too much action going on, and all in all allow you to just engage more with your audience and teach them things that maybe they don't know about the individuals, which they obviously can't get from just playing the games themselves. So, let's move on to the next point. Step 4, find your audience. And I've said this a lot, that you need to know who you're catering towards. Are you going to be the Day 9, the person who teaches everyone from the bottom of Bronze League to Mid-Masters? Are you going to be the person who wants to get people to be a better gamer? Or are you going to be the Husky of the world? Are you going to be the person who wants to be hyper, wants to scream and shout, get enjoyment, get excitement, and get audiences on their feet, clapping their hands, etc.? If you find out what your market is, then you're going to be able to cater towards that. And I strongly suggest that if your analytical skills and your knowledge of the game aren't so up to scratch, focus on the enjoyment side to start with, because you can't be the person who teaches unless you know your subject exceptionally well. But more so than what does your audience want, what do you want? If your audience if you want to cater to people who are analytical, but you absolutely hate doing all the research, you hate studying the build orders and all of that, it's not going to work long term. You're going to hate what you do, and you're not going to produce as good as stuff, and it'll come across in your voice. You need to love what you do, and if you don't, find something you do, be it StarCraft or not. So, big points, play-by-play or analytical. Find your niche, or find which role you want to take, and really focus on that. It's incredibly difficult to do both. Speaking as someone who's run a YouTube channel, putting a game up every single day of the year for the last year minimum, it is exceptionally hard to do play-by-play and also analytical casting. There's just too much going on. It's why you usually work in casting duos, and every LAN event I've done, every tournament I've done, every show match I've done, there's always a person with you, and you each take on a role. It allows you to concentrate better. And finally, work out if you're going to be a fun or factual player. And this is a bit of an extension of analytical. Most people prefer the positives. They prefer what someone did good to what the mistakes were. And the reason for that, and the reason I would personally always suggest people who are starting out in casting or aren't really good at the game to focus on the positives, is ultimately, if you're casting the best of the best, and you are casting the pro players, and that's who I'm talking about here, then you don't want to be saying they did this or that wrong. Because if you know what they should have been doing so well, surely you would be the person beating them. So, think of the positives they're doing. You can make some, if there's a massive mistake, like, for example, again, going back to a basketball analogy this time, if they're just running down the court and they drop the ball, you can point that out as a mistake. If they go for +1 attack before +1 armor, unless you can justify why you think that's wrong, just say it. And that's a good thing to usually stick to. Again, if you're doing analytical casting, you can point out a few more faults or different things they can do, but always look at things that are positive. So, if there isn't a direct problem, then look at, hey, what was the good in that? So, they took a gas early. That's going to mean they can get X, Y, or Z tech sooner, rather than that means they're not going to be able to get their expansion down so soon. Look at the positives, because people will always be more excited about what they can do, as opposed to what they can't. So, let's go on to the final point, step 5. Just other hints and tips as they come out. Now, one of the biggest, most difficult parts of casting a game of StarCraft is the dead space you get between when you say, hello ladies and gentlemen, and after you've introduced the players, to the point where they actually show what they're going to do. StarCraft games in the first really 5 minutes are generally very repetitive. Yes, there are some build orders that can be quite interesting there, but generally speaking, people are going to do very normal things before they show what they're planning in the mid-game. That's dead space, that's dead time that you've got to fill with something interesting. If you're a comic genius, by all means tell us jokes, make me laugh. If you're not, talk about the players, tell me what their match history was. Tell me a little bit about the meta game at the moment. There's loads of things you can use to fill the time. I mean, Day 9 is a prime example, and this is something that is very polarizing on opinion, but tell us about what else has been going on. Tell us what your dog had for breakfast, if that's your thing. But make sure it is interesting to your audience, but above all else, if you're filling dead time, make sure you don't miss something important in that game. There's nothing worse than if you're sitting there telling us about this amazing new strategy you saw in Terran v Terran while a Zerg player 6-pooling, because you've just missed the key part of the game, or one of the key parts of the game. Next, passion. this is one thing that came out, I'd say, almost above all else in all of the feedback I got on what makes a good caster. You have to be passionate about the subject, and if you're not, people will not listen to you. It won't come across in your voice. And more than anything else, I don't believe that you are going to be able to cast long term, put in the time, effort, money, and stress involved of becoming a good caster unless you really love what you're doing. You should enjoy this. And unless you're really the top of the top, there really isn't money in this. So you've got to enjoy it as a hobby. So make sure you're passionate about it, make sure you enjoy it. And if you're not those things, then maybe reevaluate if this is the right thing for you to do. And finally, regular practice. Now, if you're passionate about it and you enjoy it, this won't be a problem at all. You will want to be casting, you will want to be playing, and you will want to be doing everything involving StarCraft. So, again, regular practice. We all have busy lives, we all have schedules. Obviously, I'd love to be able to do StarCraft casting as a career and all the things related to esports, but for the majority it's not possible, and as a result you've got to fit it around what you do have time for. So me personally, I'm able to put up a game every single day of the week on my YouTube channel, as well as attend tournaments and LAN events through having worked a lot and doing an awful lot of videos and an awful lot of casting. You may not be able to do a daily thing like that, you may not be able to go to tournaments, you may not be able to stream, you may not be able to do any of those things. But find what you can do. Even if it's, say, one game a month, one game a week. Maybe you can cast 3 games a week, but you've only got time to play another 3 yourself. Find out what you want to do, and make sure you do that. But set yourself a schedule and a routine and stick to it. That's the most important thing. Now, what I am going to do, I'm just going to switch to my normal overlay screen while I flick across. We're going to have a quick look at the in-game settings and things you need to think about here. So, I'm actually in the Heart of the Swarm beta. So, the reason I chose to do that is purely due to the fact that, well, it's coming out in a couple of months. People are going to get interested in casting again, and might as well look at the settings for this now. So, first and foremost, you can see my nice little timer cover here. This doesn't have to be fancy. If you're not great at Photoshop or don't know anyone who is, or don't know any graphic designers, just put a black box over it. And the purpose is that if I flick over and move it out the way, you have this little box here, which, while it's minimized, doesn't matter too much. But if you maximize it up, you can see how long the game is, and that can be something which can give away a lot of interesting details about what's going on, how engagements are going to go, etc. So make sure you cover that up, and if you are casting from a replay, make sure you don't pay too much attention to what's going on, because otherwise, or how long the game is, because otherwise you'll start predicting things as well. So that's the first thing. Next, of course, we should talk a little bit about the nameplates and the different tabs of information going on. Firstly, Control N hides and shows this nice little nameplate. If you don't use Starboard or anything like that, that's a great way just to have a title of who's playing, and it's really nice for viewers. Next, we've got this little tab on the side, and I'm actually going to start this game and put the speed way up. We have, of course, things being produced, which is all fine. It's just showing you what's going on. Now, in Heart of the Swarm, you can actually click on these things to show where they're being produced from, which is awesome. As well as the production tab, which, if you're new to casting, I suggest you just keep it on that. But as you get more experience, you have things like the units tab, the resources lost tab, and the income tab. You can flick through all of those. In addition, you have things like these different bar charts where you can see how much army supply each of the players have, what their worker supply is, what their income is, and you can use those as and when necessary. Finally, you can obviously fancy up your overlays. I mean, I'm using XSplit, so I've got this little picture of me broadcasting, so if someone's watching my YouTube channel, they know who I am if they see me at a live event. I've got this nice little thing here for SC2 Cast, because they host an awful lot of my games and do great stuff for the community. And then, of course, I've got my Twitter tag as well, so you can get all those things up. Final things to say is obviously through the options menu. If we go through to the gameplay, don't worry about these bits up here. In terms of the interface, I think it's always a really good idea to make sure that you have, well, it's optional whether you have the team colored life bars. Some people like it, some people don't. Show worker status, that's how many workers there are in a base or mining or in a gas. I think that's really useful. You can see if someone's over or under saturated. Other things to really think about is show the unit life bars. Now, Heart of the Swarm allows you to have always, only show damaged, only show selected, or just normal. So I personally have it on always when I'm casting solo. If you are casting with someone else and you feel confident that you'll always select the units that are important in engagement, put it to selected. If you want to mess around, you can try having it only on damage units. Again, it depends what you want to cater for. But generally, because a lot of players have them up always, a lot of people who play the game are more comfortable seeing them always up. Other than that, of course, have the control groups up and make sure that you have the game timer going, because that is one way that you can get a lot of very important information about what's going on. So let's switch back to the slideshow quickly, and of course we will get to the conclusion, which is a thank you very much for watching. Of course, I put my picture up there again because I wasn't thinking I would definitely switch over to the game. But yeah, if you've got any questions at all, anything you'd like to ask me, make sure that you send me a tweet. It is, of course, at Madals SC2, which is up on screen here very nicely. You can also check out my YouTube channel, which this is hosted on, so you should be able to find it pretty quickly. youtube.com/Madals91. Make sure you subscribe, because if you like StarCraft, I put new games up every single day of the week, so do check that out. And yeah, send me a tweet, that sort of thing. If you want to contact me by email, it's up there as well, sc2england@hotmail.co.uk. Before anyone complains about Hotmail, it's purely because I don't use it that much. It's just that if anyone wants to contact me out of the blue. And lastly, a massive thank you to all the community groups I asked for feedback on what they like and dislike about casters, but specifically to Reddit StarCraft, because I put up a thread there with what do you love or hate about casters, and I got over 180 responses to that in 48 hours, which really helped me massively to put this presentation together and get some great stuff in there. So that's it, guys. Any questions, or guys and girls, any questions, make sure you, of course, send me a tweet. Send me a tweet anyway, tell me what you thought of this how-to guide. Follow me on Twitter, of course, subscribe to my YouTube, give this video a like, and leave me any comments below, and I'll try and get back to everyone. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye for now.